or maybe in jobs, groups in certain professions could be more likely displayed than in other professions. So to dive a little deeper on the pedestrian detection example, so this is a study that I made and I'll be presenting in a few weeks in CVPR. And the idea is, so I ran a bunch of pedestrian detection algorithms. These are algorithms that detect people in images, and this could be used in autonomous cars to detect people and avoid them, not to crash into them. So I think you can see something wrong here. So this is a state-of-the-art algorithm with one of the best performance in terms of accuracy. But I think you can see there's a problem here and here. So children, I'm not sure, I didn't investigate race, but at least children were not detected by these state-of-the-art methods. So I compared a bunch of all state-of-the-art methods, and you can see, so the graph on the left compares adults and children, and on the right male and female, and children had much higher miss rates, which means they were not detected. And the female had only slightly less detections. It was not significant for gender, but it was quite significant for age. So this brings some physical salience of algorithmic bias in robotics. So it's likely that we might have biased crash outcomes in autonomous cars, for example. Another interesting aspect of this is that the choice of algorithm is not only about how accurate is my algorithm, but also what is the trade-off between the accuracy overall people that you have in the training set, but also the trade-off between that and how well it does with different people. Another interesting question I think you can ask in these topics of bias in robotics, but in general in bias. So bias against which groups? We're all aware of the discussions about bias in age bias or gender bias, ethnicity bias, religion. And it comes out in the news a lot about these biases. People with disabilities, it turns out there are also some issues, for example, in detection, pedestrian detection. If you have a wheelchair, you have more trouble being detected by these algorithms. This could be a dataset problem as well. But these are legally protected groups, but there are also potentially other groups that you could think of. So what about groups of certain visual appearance? I just put some random pictures of punks and tattoos and people who wear masks in the street or cosplayers. So should we care about disparities along these groups? What about groups at certain locations? So if you live in a poor neighborhood or a rich neighborhood, or in a lowly populated and highly populated area? What about people who just go to unlikely environments, unlikely in the sense that they would never be trained or anticipated by the programmers? So people who live or go to the desert, or people who work in offices with glass floors. So I'm pushing the boundaries of what bias means here, but it's on purpose maybe to start the discussion. What about groups that live at environments of specific characteristics, like untidy rooms? People that are untidy might be more subjected to failures in the robot. So, or groups of high uncertainty to the system. This goes back to the example before. So if you're people that go through roads that are not, of which the system doesn't have information, they will be exploited by the algorithm to learn about the world. So which of these, only statistical biases, but which of these biases would be unfair? So I think that's also an interesting question. And then this is one of the last ones. So there's a growing community of researchers in the machine learning field, which deals with fairness. It's the fact or the faith community, fairness and transparency and ethics community. They have several conferences now. And so what I did was I went to one of these papers who tries to classify different sources of bias. This is Suresh 2019, and I tried to find parallel examples in robotics. So, for example, they talk about historical bias, representation bias, measurement bias, aggregation bias, and evaluation bias. So in historical bias means bias in the world as it is. For example, our world has more men CEOs than male CEOs than female CEOs. And if you do an image search of CEO, or at least if you some years ago, if you did a search of CEO, you would only get male CEOs as the result. So this is a problem with the bias in the world as it is, as opposed to maybe what we want the world to be. Examples in robotics could be, for example, geographical bias in street safety, for example, like I said in my example, used by an autonomous car. Another source of bias could be representation bias, which is when your data set does not include certain kinds of people, like ImageNet, a very used data set for machine learning and computer vision. It doesn't have, it's only collected in Western countries, and so it does poorly on people from other countries. And in robotics, maybe a certain culture or a certain group of people, like children, are not in the training set of a social robot, and this could lead to bias issues later on. Measurement bias is when, for example, in policing, so the thing you measure is not actually what you care about. So, for example, in policing, you care about crime, but what you measure is arrests. But arrest is already something biased because of the way policing works. And in robotics, maybe there could be an issue with ascribed gender versus gender identity. So you could have a classifier that says, okay, this is a woman, and then interact this way. But gender is something that should be reported by the person, so it's not observable. Aggregation bias is when which group you belong to actually matters when making a decision, and you don't take that into account. And because of that, you kind of distribute the risk in a weird way. For example, in clinical recommendations, diabetes is actually influenced by ethnicity, and if you don't take that into account, you do poorly across the whole spectrum and maybe biased towards some of the population. Which in robotics, maybe this could be like a non-culturally adaptive robot that does poorly for everyone because it is not adapted to the culture of anyone. And evaluation bias is when maybe you have the data for male and female subjects equally, but when you evaluate, when you do a benchmark, you want to get the highest points possible in this benchmark, but this benchmark itself is biased. So this is the problem with facial recognition software, that even though they have data sets for men and women equally, the benchmark is done on a data set that is biased. So you try as much as possible to score well in that data set, even though you have data for other things. So this could be a robot that has capabilities, but is trained only on specific kinds of homes, for example. Additionally, in robotics, especially, I think there are other possible causes or sources of bias, like function or purpose. So when, for example, we have male-centered sex robots, this could be a source of bias in the function or purpose itself, so not so much about data. And in visual design, so maybe when you can use stereotypical conception of gender or profession in your design. And another source of bias could be lack of diversity in the development. Okay, so the last thing I would like to talk about is how do then we govern the technology to make sure that people are not harmed in the process, and that we make sure these systems are trustworthy and trusted in general. Even in the event of an accident, where accident here is something broad, like a physical accident or like a discrimination accident. So we need some kind of system of accountability and transparency, and we need to be able to find out what went wrong when some accident happens, or when someone complains, for example, this robot is discriminating against me. We should have devices to be able to trace back to why this was the case, and is this person right about what he or she is saying, and so that we can, people can trust that we will be able to guide this technology to something good. So this is where a project in Oxford, my colleagues in Oxford, Marina Girotka and Helena Webb and Alan Winfield from Bristol, they're starting this new project, which is officially starting in a couple of months. And I'm collaborating with them, and they're sponsoring this workshop as well. And they're starting this project called Robotips, Developing Responsible Robots for the Digital Economy. And the main goal in there is first to develop some notions of accountability and liabilities suitable to this kind of new human-robot teams and interactions. But the main idea comes from a paper that they wrote last year called The Ethical Black Box. The idea is, so what I was saying, that all robots that you sell should be equipped with some sort of black box, like the same ones you use in flight recorders in airlines. So that when something happens, when an accident happens, we can understand why the robot behaved the way it did, and so that we can hold the company or developers or someone accountable for what went wrong, so that there's transparency in the process, and so that we can not jeopardize trust as soon as one big accident happens. There's still something is there to help us improve the system and make people keep trusting that we will find a solution to solve this kind of issues. So that concludes my kind of skim through a bunch of different issues. And now we'll dive deeper into some of these issues. Ayana will go into diversity, Jim will go into gender, Barbara into culture, and then John will go back general into is it the case that we always want a non-discriminative robot? So stick around for all of them, please.